Mr. GVK Prasad joins us, Co-chairman and Managing Director with Dr. Reddy's Lab. Mr. Prasad, Happy New Year to you. Thank you for joining us. Now, 2020 was a dream year for pharma companies and their shareholders. How much of the extension of 2020 good work will continue in 2021? Because 2021, in a sense, changed the outlook, perception, and also the importance of the Indian pharma stock generic sector.
Yeah, so let me start by saying I don't have that much of an opinion on the share price market cap reactions, but the industry came out of 2019 to 2020 from a regulatory kind of overhang. I think many companies resolved their FDA issues, and possibly that has helped the industry. But 2020 was a very significant year in the recognition that health is a big priority for nations and governments, and that pharma is a very strategic industry. These two things, I think, were very, very important for the industry. And we see the benefits of that continuing. Also, we saw during the last year a very close relationship between the industry and the regulators to really, bring in therapeutics for COVID, vaccines for COVID, and all of that. And we hope that, the regulatory collaboration will continue and help the industry, whether to become more efficient, become a larger strategic industry, or innovate. And in all this, the regulator has a big role. So I do feel, very confident going into 2021 that the industry is going to enjoy a period of growth.
When you say you're feeling confident, are you feeling confident of top line growth? Are you feeling confident of your product pipeline? Are you feeling confident of margins? What are you excited about?
See, I'm not talking about Dr. Reddy's specifically, but I'm talking as an industry that we feel good that there is growth ahead of us because of the various tailwinds we've had in 2020. I'm not going to talk specifically about Dr. Reddy's. We are in a silent period, and I'm not going to talk about margins, earnings, or growth.
I respect that. My question was, I respect that you're in silent period. When I asked a question, it was more like, do you expect Indian pharma companies to take a giant leap in margins? Do you expect pricing to really improve dramatically? Or do you expect, because of vaccine and other things which have happened, the dominance will increase?
So, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Certainly, I think, all these are good opportunities. I think the pricing environment has become less, there's less pressure on pricing in the regulated markets, which used to be a continuous thing. Of course, pressure will always be there, but relatively, the emphasis is on supply assurance, safety, and all that. So that has helped. The vaccine is going to be a sizable opportunity for Indian companies, for people who are in this game. And I think we are seeing the first wave of vaccines being rolled out. Whether it's going to be a continuing opportunity is something we don't know yet. That depends on the, how the immune system works, and whether it will be a recurrent situation with COVID, or it's going to be a one-time vaccine. We still have to wait for that. But having said that, I think in the near term, next 1 year plus, it's a massive opportunity.
Mr. Prasad, the COVID business, in a sense, added significantly to all pharma companies, whether it was domestic or whether it was international. Now the COVID care business, in a sense, could get crowded. Number of vaccines which are approved, that number will increase. Obviously, the recovery rates are strong. What is the future of COVID healthcare and the COVID spike which Indian pharma industry enjoyed last year?
So I think you're right. It is a spike, and as it normalizes, the size of the COVID opportunity will come down. But also, we witnessed some compression in primary demand last year because of people not being able to visit hospitals and their healthcare practitioners. So that I think will add and will somewhat help the industry. But you're right, the COVID care will not be as high as it was in Q2 and Q3 of last year.
Right. Mr. Prasad, hi there, good morning. Thanks so much for joining in. Just wanted to also get in an outlook in terms of what we've seen for the Indian sector as well, for pharma as a whole, and how the importance has grown across the world, because clearly there will be that implication of a manufacturing-based shift to India, the focus on API, the focus on other innovation, etc. Do you see a COVID-triggered, fueled thrust now coming into India?
So initially, there was some momentum about shifting manufacturing to India and from China because of perceptions, but I don't see that as a long-term trend. I think in the end, we have to compete. We have to get our business to be much more competitive, and I think the government has also recognized the strategic importance of the Indian industry and has announced a number of schemes which will help the industry in the long term. So I think in long term, I'm hopeful that India will play a major role in the API, intermediates, generics supply chain of the world for the pharmaceutical industry, including supplying to innovators and all of that. So, I'm bullish about the potential for the Indian pharma industry to continue to grow, both within the country and internationally. Price control in India is an opportunity for the government to play a positive role and see how we can make it more supportive of the local industry, but that still remains in the hands of the government.
And Mr. Prasad, given that India does have a fairly dominant market share in oral solids and derma, do you think that growth will now come from the more complex areas like injectables, ophthalmology, respiratory, biosimilars, where currently the market share is less than 5%?
Yeah, you're right. The market share currently is less, but if you see the pipelines of all the Indian companies, you'll see them full of injectables, respiratory products, complex generics, all of those. So India will be a force in all these areas. And of course, they are much more difficult than simple products, but that's where the value is shifting. So you can see at least all the big players with their pipelines in these areas. So growth will come from those areas. I also see that growth will also come from the branded emerging markets. These are also big opportunities, a little slower in building, but certainly more lasting in value. And as Dr. Reddy's, have also shifted some of our capital allocation to the emerging markets so that we have more stability in the business model.
Okay. The threat of the FDA inspections restarting, do you feel that's going to be a key event for the sector to watch out for in terms of growth, Mr. Prasad?
So this could be a risk for the industry and for individual companies, but it is my belief that most Indian companies have used the last several years to improve operations, improve the quality culture, improve the systems, embraced digital transformation. So with all this, I think we are in a much better shape than we were maybe 3-4 years before. So while regulatory inspections are a potential risk, I think the industry is much better positioned today to face scrutiny from anywhere in the world.
Okay, fair enough. And in terms of really, how you see the sector poised for growth going forward, particularly, after so much that we've seen in the last year, developments on the R&D front, as well as, the kind of performance we've seen on some of the companies. Do you feel we're at an inflection point? What do you really feel is the opportunity for Indian pharma going ahead?
So I think, each company has its own emphasis. But I see several themes playing out in this industry. I think strength of manufacturing will remain a key driver of competitiveness. Global expansion into new markets, into big markets, that's another area of opportunity. Innovation is still an untapped opportunity. Of course, the services sector is doing that, serving innovators worldwide, and it's driving some growth. But very few companies have really broken through and introduced innovative products either in emerging markets or in the first world markets. That seems to be an opportunity for the medium to long term. And of course, the generic industry continues to grow, and it provides significant headroom for growth. As you can see, the major players, Teva, Sandoz, Mylan, they're not, Viatris now, are not in growth mode. So it's an opportunity for Indian companies to become aggressive in the space also.
How will the new administration change the pharma regime in US?
That I don't know, but we didn't see a lot of negative impact in the previous administration, so I don't see any major shift. There is going to be a shift for localizing certain products or certain areas, and that I think seems to be a secular trend, whichever government comes in many countries, that they see pharma as a strategic industry. And in the initial days of COVID, there was some insecurity about supplies, and hence there has been a push to localize manufacturing. How well that turns out and how important that becomes, I don't know yet. But that could be something to watch for.
Indian manufacturing standards become much better in last 2-3 years, or has US FDA the scrutiny levels have come down? Because given that suddenly plants are getting approval, it has to be one.
No, the industry has responded. All of us have really focused down on quality, on manufacturing excellence, on adopting digital tools, mechanizing and automation at a different level. So all of these are helping the industry be much more compliant, much more vigilant. And I do think we are at a different level in the industry in terms of our systems and compliance and quality. Does it mean we won't have an occasional hiccup? We might, but I think we are at a much less vulnerability than we were a few years ago.
As we look into the future, Mr. Prasad, just like a couple of years ago, Dr. Reddy was able to identify the US generic business, the European business. Then he moved into new drug development, specialty chemicals. For next couple of years, what is that big honeypot which Indian pharma industry should be eyeing?
I wish I knew that answer, but I can tell you where we are incubating businesses and investing in at a very high level. Certainly, the core business of active ingredients, generics, branded and non-branded, continues to be the driver of growth in the next few years. That's not going to change in the next 3 to 5 years. Beyond 3 to 5 years, I think we see biologics, both innovative biologics, biosimilars being an opportunity. Innovation in a certain TA. We started doing work in dermatology, neurology, and then we didn't get traction there. So we are moving and examining other therapeutic areas. But innovation will be a long-term game, maybe 6-7 years from now. So that's how I look at the opportunities. The services is certainly a significant opportunity, and many companies have capitalized on them. That could also be a growth vector in the 3 to 5 years. So in essence, services, biologics, innovative products, these would be the long-term drivers beyond generics, for us at least.
And Mr. Prasad, last year we did see a very encouraging margin expansion picture for the Indian pharmaceutical sector. Do you think that now with cost savings initiatives in place that margins have the scope to do well with the fact that we've seen a lot of digital adoption too?
So I think, the low-hanging fruit has been picked in terms of cost. A lot of us have focused on cost. We've cut costs across the board, and that helped us compete better. The next wave of growth reduction will be more difficult, I feel. It has to come from really innovative ideas, like you said, digital adoption, automation, all of that. Margin expansion from a cost point of view, I think the opportunity will not be very large. Companies will continue to cut costs, but it won't. I think the low-hanging fruit has been picked.
I know you did speak of how 2020 was a year when the government has taken cognizance and realized how important the pharmaceutical sector is, but how have you looked at, individual aspects from the government, spends on healthcare, creating more medical facilities and doctors, a strong environment for the R&D spends? What have you made of the steps that have been taken so far, and what is it that you'd like to see?
So I think the central government has been talking about this, but a lot of the execution is with the states. Some states, especially the southern states, are doing rather well. I think there's an opportunity for many other states to improve their allocations, improve their primary healthcare networks, and ensure the last mile is available for people in the rural areas. All of this. It remains to be seen how effective on-the-ground implementation will be, but the intention certainly seems to be there to put more focus on health in general.
Okay, fair enough. Mr. Prasad, as companies also continue to to really try and define the growth opportunity, companies like yourself have actually invested a lot as well. And do you think the significant move up in the value chain will also perhaps be a trigger for higher margins? Will there be, I know you don't want to talk specific numbers, but just in terms of trend, the fact that, whether it be in product segments, like injectable complex business, whether it be in trying to move up the value chain, like what are the kind of paths that, perhaps a company like yours is looking to in order to really move to the next level?
So, certainly margins have the potential to move up, but I think we have to understand that it's not a low margin industry today. So the incremental margin expansion will be challenging. It'll depend on the segment that you're competing in, your cost structures, and all of those. There is room to improve, but it won't be a huge expansion of margins. The industry has enjoyed good margins, and we'll have to protect that. And to protect that, we have to work on costs, work on portfolio of products and innovation. So I certainly don't think this is a low margin industry. It's a very good margin industry, and I think we need to protect that.
Sure. And finally, I know we've touched upon it, but in terms of the vaccine opportunity for the Indian manufacturer, do you think that we're perhaps going to see a further spate of contracts led by global players, that we could see a lot more evolving on this front?
So like I said, next 12 to 18 months, this is a big opportunity for all the players, and we have to see who else will be the next wave of approvals that the government will grant. For the companies approved, I think this is absolutely a great opportunity, massive opportunity. And we'll have to see whether it will be a recurrent opportunity or a one-time limited opportunity.
Thank you so much for joining us, taking us in detail through some of the
Mr. Prasad, apologies. Just before we let you go, I just want to know if you could, for your shareholders and investors, just sort of give us a long-term vision as to where you see the company headed in the next 5 years, what the growth opportunity is for Dr. Reddy's in terms of your financials, growth, your vision, mission, and how you see this placing itself within the Indian pharma industry. We seem to have snapped that video line, but we've really garnered a lot of deep insight as to what the outlook is for the Indian pharma industry, the vaccine opportunity, government spends, how we're looking at margin expansion for the pharma sector, and the key strength of manufacturing as well that India has versus some of the other global pharma majors. That was a word coming in from GV Prasad, the co-chairman managing director at Dr. Reddy's Laboratories. In fact, let's take a sneak peek as well as to where the stock is currently at. 5,389 on Dr. Reddy's, holding out by nearly 1%. The rest of the market too and firm fettle as we're closely eyeing now the coveted 50K mark on the index, 49,210 on the Sensex right now. For the Nifty, 116 points, resilience within the small cap index. I think we'll take a quick break then right here on the show. Stay with us for more on the other side.